Welcome back to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans and first responders transform their lives from the prayer room to the boardroom. I'm your host, Daniel Faust. There's no superhero buttons this time, but we are still in the superhero battle room. This is more of an oasis to go and relax, and we're bringing our good man, Doug Barry. He was a service member that transformed his life to be a children's author, sharing positive messages to the world. I don't know those positive messages. He authored them, so we're going to bring him on stage to go share those messages and share a little about his war hero to superhero transformation. Hey, Doug, do I have you?
Hey, thanks for having me on tonight.
All right, so let's get into hearing the beautiful tapestry of your authoring career. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about what inspired you to join the military.
Sure, just service before self, some sort of thing. You want to do something that makes a difference. So that was the main point. The other thing was back in the early 80s, you started to see factories fall apart, and I wanted to be able to do something where after 20 plus years, you'd actually get a pension to help you in those later years in life. But really, I mean, you want to get out and make a difference, and that was it. I mean, I wasn't going to make a difference on the poultry farm. I had to get out and do something with my life.
Wow, you came in a way better reason than I did. I came in because of a girl, so I'm glad you came in the service. Not every person has those humiliating stories like myself, but I'm amazed that people are like, hey, I came in to do this. And yes, it is true. If we look at statistics now, you look at from the 80s to today. In the 80s, it was about 145,000 businesses that gave a pension. Now there's only about 14,000 businesses that give a pension. So 90% of those same businesses in the 80s that exist today don't give pensions and benefit plans. So you were pretty wise in the 80s to be prepared for today. So that was good to go over and hear on that. So let's hear more about the backstory about becoming a veteran. How long did you serve and when you left, and more about that?
Sure. I enlisted in December 1985, and I got out in 2006. So just a little over 20 years. I was really scheduled to put Master Sergeant on, but I got out as a tech sergeant. I'd already done 4 tours to the desert, and I felt like there were bigger, better things for me to do at that point in my life. So I did my 20, and I achieved the goal of getting the pension. And I was working with an ARCA / NASCAR team at the time as a part-time mechanic. So I was kind of hoping that would take off more than it did, but it was still fun. Through the course of that 20-year career, there were good times, there were bad times. 4 years at Davis Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, which I truly loved. Got my year in Korea under my belt from there, it was the best year of my life. It was the worst year of my life. My life absolutely, I'll try not to get too emotional. My life fell apart. But I did give my life to God.
That's really cool in that particular regard. I went to Kunsan too. I'm not sure. Were you at Osan or Kunsan?
Kunsan.
All right. That's where the place most people come to Jesus. Osan's a little too busy to get that particular regard.
Yeah, so, it's great. I mean, when you make that decision, for me anyway, it was like a light switch. Everything I was losing came back.
That's really awesome. So you served 20 years in the Air Force. So I'm fellow Air Force too. So we're buddies. I'm an E6 right now. I'm either retiring E6 or E7. It depends on the day. We'll see what happens.
Exactly.
But in 2006, I know for me in 2006, I was just getting out of Korea and then coming back, and we almost walked into like a recession in 2008 and everything else. So how did that transition go in 2006? Was it good for you? Was it bad? Did they have the services you needed to make a good transition out?
I tell folks, and everybody thought I was crazy because about 6 months prior to separating, I started looking for work, and everybody's like, why in the world are you looking for work already? It's not like you can take a job or anything. And I'm like, well, I don't anticipate, even though in the transition assistance programs, they said, corporate America is just waiting for leaders like you to get out into the world. They'll snap you up in a heartbeat. Well, no, they won't. And they didn't. It took me 6 to 8 weeks to find my first job, which was a store manager at a Jiffy Lube, which I knew was not my final stop. It served its purpose. It was 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and I got out of there as fast as I could and landed a really good job at Ram Automotive, Ram Clutches. They manufactured performance racing clutches and street clutches, and I did 13 years there, and that was a good fit for me, actually. Drove me a little crazy on I ran the tech helpline. And if you can only imagine how hard it is to try to explain to somebody how to put a clutch in over the phone while they're laying on their back in the dirt, not necessarily the easiest thing to do.
No, and I'm not mechanically inclined. So if I was your customer, I hosed you on that phone for a long time because I would have been like, I can't visualize those types of things. And I actually learned how to ride a clutch when I was in Germany. I mean, I love manuals now, but back in the day, it was a horror show. And I'm glad I learned on a GOV. So 13 plus years at, you said Ran Automotive, is that correct?
Ram, yeah, RAM, Ram Automotive.
Oh, Ram, okay. Yeah, so now it's got us to 2020. What made you pivot to become a children's author and then serving your current community? Because that's kind of huge, going from like Air Force to basically working performance cars. And I see all the sports and different memorabilia in the back, and you're like, children's author. Okay, let's see how that pivot happened.
Yeah, from Ram, I went to Lowe's and was a department supervisor there. And it was at that time where I started, COVID hit, and I was getting some COVID relief money because I was a frontline worker. So I was getting bonus money. And I had written the story back when my son was about 10 years old, which was about probably 10 years prior to that. And you send it out and you get turned down, and you set it on the shelf for 8 months. You send it out again and you get turned down. I got turned down about 3 times, but at that point in time, Fulton Books decided they would roll with the story that I'd written. So we ran with it. We used the COVID money that was just kind of, dare I say, extra money, if there is such a thing, and use that to get it published. And I thought I'd sell about 30 copies, and lo and behold, about 500 copies later, I'm like, hey, this thing's got some legs. So we started pushing it, and we wrote a second book, and now the third book is en route. We're in the middle of publishing that.
That is amazing. Let me share a little experience about authoring, because I'm an author too, but not children's books, to our audience. About 6,000 books a day get published to Amazon alone. Is 84,000 books on marriage when I publish my marriage book. The average self-published author gets 2 to 8 books a month, and average usually no more than 100 books in a lifetime. So when Doug's talking 500 books sold, that's a way above the normal mark, because these big, huge publishers, if you go look at the famous books in the New York Times bestsellers, they're pushing 5 and 6 figure dollars to get those New York Times bestsellers and everything else. So kudos to you to go over and getting 500 book sales. How fast of a turnaround was that, those 500 books?
Probably about 6 months on the first book. And it's level. I wish it would have maintained that, but it has leveled out. But that's cool, because right now I'm still got a 9-to-5 job, and it's just a hobby. So we're just pushing it as much as we can and see where it goes. I truly feel God put me on this path, just the way the story and everything kind of landed in my lap. You always think you can do something like this. And one day my son caught a baby rabbit in the backyard, and he named it Jasper, and he brought it in the house, and it spent the night with us. And I looked over at my wife, and I said, she thought I was crazy. I'm like, there's the story. That's the story for the book. The rabbit, we can't have kids going out in the backyard and snatching up rabbits. So he sneaks in the house. But that's really how that first book, The Night I Spent in the People House, came to be. And it's just kind of going from there.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Do you have the books on you so you can show us a little preview of that?
I sure do. I've got, let's see what we got here. We got the first book here, The Night I Spent in the People House. That is book number 1. And the instructions I gave the illustrator, my publisher, was that rabbit has got to be the cutest rabbit anybody has ever seen. And they pretty much nailed it. But that's the first book. The second book, we didn't know what to do. Everybody's like, what's the second book going to be? And I'm like, I have no idea, because I was going to be one and done. But we like to vacation at the beach. So you guessed it, a day at the beach with Jasper and friends. And they go, and they never been to a beach. So they go to a beach and have lots of fun and play with the the animals out in the ocean, build sandcastles, chase seagulls, that sort of thing. And the third book, which is in publishing now, is Farmer Jasper. He goes to the farm, kind of fell back on my poultry farming background for that one. And he goes down to his buddy Mouse's farm, and they feed the animals and they plant a garden and do all kinds of fun stuff with that. And the big thing, the big win from last year was we actually now have Jasper. We have a stuffed Jasper. He is made in China, which I didn't want to do, but kids absolutely love this thing. And I think that's going to be a huge help in marketing my books.
Definitely agree on that particular regard, because once you got something tangible to the book, it goes over and goes hand in hand. Think of Elf on the Shelf. It's not the book itself, it's the elf, the whole background of that particular regard. So that's absolutely amazing that you're able to pivot to your current community, go over and serving as a book author. And I know both being a children's book author, which is even harder than a standard typical author, and then all the things that you've gone through life in the military and COVID and all what we talked about. What is your secret fuel when pressure and tough times come?
Oh, it's God. I mean, I just lean on him like you wouldn't believe. And he has not let me down yet. So we're going to keep rolling with that. And definitely put him out in front of everything before I do anything. I have felt his calling before, excuse me, to do things that I did not feel comfortable doing, but I did them anyway. And I lost the battle, but won the war, so to speak. One was confronting another author who was absolutely filling our kids' heads with trash and basically pornography, but yet it was still in a high school book reading list. My name was drugged through the mud, but I did get the high school to change their summer reading program. Another one was running for school board. I lost, but that's fine. I think the message I put out while I was running definitely changed the way the community viewed the school board. So I think that was a win as well. But yeah, put God out in front of everything.
That's really amazing in that particular regard. And he will go over and win, even though when we think that we're losing. So now with our last question in a little bit is 3 superhero tactics. So you can have a look through your military career, becoming a children's author, think of the school board, whatever it is. If you had to mentor either your younger self or someone that is going in that similar role, what tactics would you give them to go from surviving to thriving?
Well, yeah, and I touched on that a little bit that last segment, because one of them is put God out in front of whatever you're going to do, whatever is laid on your heart to do. Pray about it, put God out in front of it, and quite honestly, you can't go wrong. The other 2 are just don't give up. If you've started something, just keep going. And the third one would be, and this is something that I had a battle with as a young man, don't fear failure. That will absolutely lock you up. You won't be able to get anything done. And I look now at failure. I try to get that word, and I tell the young folks, get that out of your vocabulary. It's learning. It's not failure. And you will learn through the process. You won't fail through the process, and you will get to the success on the other side.
I totally agree with that. There's an acronym that's out there. It's called FAIL is first attempt in life. If you take the second or subsequential attempts in life, then you'll sail. So you'll fail initially, but then you can sail over long term. So if you keep going over and getting back up and repivoting and everything else, you can go from fail to sail. So I thank you for all the wisdom and that you went over and passed into this awesome podcast and everything else. And the last little bit before we go close out the credits is for you to go and I've uplift your brand, talk more about the book, any upcoming projects, and then a quote either from yourself or from someone that you think that's influential, and then we'll close out the credits. So thank you for coming on the show.
Well, no problem. Yeah, probably best to talk about my future plans. I'm reading a book I've read a book by Dave Knoll. He is a 2-time Emmy Award-winning TV producer, creator. He created the Chopped franchise TV program. And he was telling a story in his book about, he was talking, and I don't remember the gentleman's name. He was pitching a TV show to this gentleman. And the guy said, what you're pitching is a lemonade stand. You got to think bigger than that. You got to think huge. big isn't big enough. So with that in mind, I've got huge plans, no longer big plans, for this empire. I guess you could say that I would like to build in child entertainment. It starts with the books. It leads into the stuffed toys and the merchandising, which I've got a couple avenues for merchandising, mugs and T-shirts and hats and all that sort of thing. And I plan on getting it in stores. But beyond that, we're looking. I've had a lot of people say this would make an outstanding cartoon for children. So that is definitely in the back of my mind. And if that opportunity arises, I'm certainly going to jump on it. But in the mindset of think huge, we've got further to go than just cartoons. And that's entertainment venues, be it mini golf or a full-blown amusement park, where each section of the park, children are feel to be part of each storybook that I write. So there would be the night I spent in a people house section of the park, and they would interact with parts of that story, and then the beach book, and then the Farmer Jasper book. And I'm writing a fourth book about Jasper's Christmas adventure, where the first half of the book is going to be Santa Claus and all that stuff. And the second half of the book is going to be a wise owl explaining to them the nativity scene that they see in front of the church. So that is the big picture. I mean, I'm not stopping. God put me on this path. I am going to ride it as long as I can. And we're going to keep turning out books. There's already an idea for a book beyond the Christmas book. So, I mean, the ideas just keep coming. I try to plan ahead in each book. The first book, there was a pond. So obviously there could be a stream that leads to the ocean, which got them to the beach. In the Farmer Jasper book, there's a train that rides, and they notice a train going across the back of the farm. Well, now I've opened up future books for train rides, and they can virtually go just about anywhere they want to. And as far as just completely out there stories, rabbits can see stuff, and just like kids can, that will jog their imagination. And when they go to sleep, they can dream, and they can go on a space flight. They can do anything. A rabbit just as a child. So I'm thinking maybe in the future there will be a kind of a throw off from the regular Jasper books, and it'll be a Jasper bedtime stories, Jasper's dreams sort of thing, where he just does all kind of wild stuff.